Welcome to the Ops Experts Club. If you're at all interested in anything we talk about here in this episode, go ahead and check out the description down below and click any of the links there. Or if you just want to know more about us, click the links below. Now on to the episode.
Ops Experts Club, Terryn Turner. How you, brother?
Hey there.
Hey, brother. Just Keith Yaki it up, right? Like, let's just keep it real, Terryn. The good old days. Keith Yaki calling us up with Hey Brothers.
Yes, sir.
Love it. Terryn, we have got a special guest here today who is a dear friend of mine and somebody we've been in league with a long time here at the Collab team, and it's the amazing Dan Tao. He is great at what he does, especially when it comes to making sure your sales stay in the boat. You know, I think that's probably the simplest way we can put it. So, Dan, thank you so much for joining us today, brother.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So, Terryn, I thought what we could talk about today, especially because we have Dan on the show and he's such a good-hearted dude, but actually an expert in this topic as well. We could talk about something that a lot of founders, I think, and maybe it's not even founders. I think founders has to have the heart. I think it's team south of founders when it comes to retaining sales. Like, I think that a lot of times we're targeting sales, right? We spend so much time and energy on it, right? We refine our marketing. We get it to the book of calls. We get the call on the, you actually get the customer that shows up instead of the ones that no-show you, right? You get them on the call. You anchor the sale. They actually end up making the payment. You collected their money and everybody wins. And then people forget, oh, wait a minute, they could still fall off over the next, if it's a payment plan or if it's a recurring subscription, something they have signed up for, they could still fall off. And what do we do about the people that fall off? And I think a lot of people, they just neglect it. I think that they put a lot of attention on it. The founder is really passionate about it, but the attention and passion begins to wane on everybody else south of the food chain from the CEO founder. You want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, almost everybody we work with has some sort of a payment plan option.
Right. Yep.
But you'll be surprised how many people I've asked the question of, who's got their eye on these payment plans, because I guarantee you not all of them are going through.
That's right.
There's going to be a big percentage. It's been a while since I've quoted it, but first round of payment plans, you can expect 25% to fail for various reasons.
Right.
Not all of them because they're upset, just because cards expire, balances are full, they forgot to make a payment. And some people look at me and they're like, what do you mean? Who's tracking these? And I was like, well, you're just hoping they're coming in and closing your eyes on the rest. So it's a big opportunity because that's money people have promised you that could be sitting out there being untouched.
Yeah, we talk about it a lot. Dan and I have been friends for a long time. And, the way this all started was actually he had been doing this for Pedro Adeo, when it came to helping Pedro with collections. And that started with you, Terryn. You started it actually with Pedro Adeo's. And then we passed it to some internal team on the Collab side of things. But then they wanted to bring somebody on full time to do it. And I said, well, I think Dan would do an amazing job at this. And he ended up going full time with Pedro, doing this and knocking down hundreds of thousands of dollars every year for Pedro of retained sales. And it was simply by what we came to coin, Dan and I, by doing it from a heart first perspective, right? Doing it from a place of, hey, and a lot of language that Dan and I use when we talk about heart first is people's yes. I mean, like a sales conversion comes from a yes. It started with a yes. It was a yes when they chose to watch your little clip of social media reel. It was a yes when they took, maybe a nudge from a friend to, hey, you got to check this guy out. Go check out this live event. It was a yes when they raised their hand or went to the back of the room or clicked the button to take next steps with you. It was a yes when they paid. It was a yes when they ascended. But Dan and I talk a lot about how the tricky thing about a yes is that it's fragile. People a lot of times will give you a yes in a moment of high energy or a high emotion, but then, buyer's remorse, right? You buy a car, you get off the lot and you're like, oh, what did I just do? How much did I just sign up for? I mean, and that, that's a big purchase, but there are a lot of people out there making small purchases where it's like, they have that same kind of buyer's remorse and it's very easy for them just to turn it off. Like, hey, I'm going to step away. I'm going to step back from it. I'm going to stop paying on it without realizing like, there's some loss for them in that too. And so we're going to talk about that side of it. But the thing that I want for people to hear today as they listen, and Terryn, Dan, I'm going to pull you in here, is the easiest way you can continue to make sales is just to rightly steward people's yes, right? These are people that are going to continue to say yes. These are your warmest leads. They're your sales that you already have in the boat. How do I nurture them in a way instead of just cutting them off? Instead of just cutting them out. Because I think a lot of founders just get frustrated when people stop making payments and they're like, F those guys, dude. We don't need those guys. Forget it. Let's just move on. Let's just go make more sales instead of no. Let's spend a little time nurturing. So Dan, let's talk a little bit to you about nurturing, about when it comes to from a heart first perspective, what do you think it's important for listeners to be thinking about when it comes to sales? You've already made these sales. They've just started to fall off. Do you want to talk about maybe just the importance of people and people's hearts and like pastoring people's hearts a little bit?
Sure. Well, first of all, again, thanks for having me. And for our clients, what we try to do is reach out with a heart when people are missing, when they fall behind on their payments. We don't want to beat them over the head with a stick. What we want to do is help them get across the finish line of what they've started to do in the first place, and that's invest in themselves. And a lot of times they're investing maybe 3, 5, 15,000 into themselves, and we just remind them of that, and we come alongside, encourage them, uplift them, and help them get back on track again. But it's not pressure. It's just rebuilding the trust. And because what we find is that when a company retains a person, a client, a student, if you will, they it's easier to turn around and resell them on more products later on down the road, and doesn't cost as much money as going out and having to pick up new clients all the time. We don't want to churn and burn. We want to retain them so that that they have a good long relationship and know that the client that we're working with really values the student or the client that they have.
No, that's good. I think Terryn, I was just on a call right before this with Caleb Peavy from Unmutable, and he said something that was really interesting that I thought was great. Great marketing agency. If you're looking for a marketing agency, Unmutable is awesome. We love working with them. But Caleb said, the ideal would be once you've sold something to somebody, really that marketing doesn't really have to put any more energy into it now. Now, literally, you could clip it over into the ops side of things, really largely with AI, right? To just maintain that person because they already gave you their yes, right? So now it's just the reminder emails. It's just like, how do we keep them engaged? It's just like minimal touch, which means for a visionary, it's less cost, right? Because these people gave you their yes, right? So the cost is low. So just like Dan said, acquisition cost to get them into the next level sale is very, very small because we're not trying to find them, right? We're not out there on Meta or out there on YouTube just shouting into the wind, hoping that we can find our ideal client. No, they're already with us. They're already in the boat. How do we just keep them nurtured? But, so a lot of people see the value in a strong client list, but sometimes I think that they can get a bad taste in their mouth when those people stop making payments instead of realizing, no, this person still loved you at one point. I mean, like this person, you were their solution at one point, but they've just started believing a different narrative. And I think we can all get in our heads like that, where it's like, we're going to always be this way. Whether it's like you start a new dieting plan and then you fall off the wagon on the dieting plan, you're like, I'm always going to be fat. You know what I mean? And you just like settle on it. Or like maybe you start a new workout and you're like, I'm always going to be weak because you stop going to the gym. Or maybe it's, whatever it is that you were trying to learn and get better at. For me, I'm not very handy, so maybe it's like I take upon myself to take this project on around the house and I start working on it. And I'm like, I'm always going to suck at this. I'm never going to be good at it. Like we can all be embrace a new narrative instead of like, no, like what got you to here in the first place? And what's your new solution if you decide that you're going to back away from this as a solution by stopping making payments? Terryn, do you want to talk about that just for a minute of like just false narratives that fill people's heads and the ease of a founder just to want to cut them off instead of realizing, no, these are just people that just need you to remind them of their yes.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like in their mind, it's harder to get them to say a yes again.
Right.
But as we've experienced, that's not true. Like you've been saying this whole time, they've said yes once, they got the hard part over.
Right.
So just trying to get them to realize they are worth still contacting and reaching out to. People like us we're probably glued to our phones and emails and our notifications all the time because it's how we work. But
Right.
when I've talked with people, and Dan could probably share that experience, people don't have that same sense as we do. They aren't seeing every email that comes through, every notification.
Right.
They're in a different world. So it's a lot of times just ignorance, even if we are emailing them, letting them know their card failed. They could be on a vacation and just not wanting to take care of it until they get back. We have no idea what's going on with them until we try. And so just giving it that initial try is the best thing that we can do. And in most cases is the easiest way to knock down half of them with the least amount of effort. Just a personal outreach. Sometimes I remember back in the day when I was doing it, just leaving people a voicemail and them knowing that that their card failed would
Yep.
get people to take care of it just because they realize, oh, okay, somebody's got their eyes on my name and my number and is calling me. So they really know I'm failing and I need
Yep.
to get this taken care of. Yeah,
That's good.
that's my tips.
I think that, and Dan, I'm going to push this over to you here in a minute. So just to prep you for it, in my mind, the pain point is twofold. And that is for most businesses, they haven't identified the who's going to reach out, right? Or then we're going to talk about the pain of whoever it is they think is reaching out, right? And then number two, like the what they're saying when they reach out. I think those are the two biggest things you have to focus on, right? So what Dan and I have seen a ton of, and Terryn, I know this is why we ended up starting Heart First to really help people, is because we saw it a lot. Is on internal teams, the sales team, like I think in founders' mind, they're like, have the sales guy reach out if the payment failed, right? But sales team does not want to double back. Like sales team does not like looking back, right? Sales team is they're looking for the next kill, right? They're looking for the next sale. They're looking for the next commission, right? When you tell them they have to go back on an old sale, something they've already realized pay on with their commission, they don't want to waste their time going backwards, right? So they push it off. They treat it at least priority. So then other founders I've seen say, well, this should be a customer service function. The downside to it being a customer service function is that you want your customer service experience to always be excellent, right? You want your people that have said yes to love to talk to your customer service people. They're there to give concierge treatment, to help them when they're stuck, to show them where things are at, to just love on them and make them feel important. And when you mix that with now they're a collections agent, the downside is you mix what customer service is there to do, and people get a bad taste in their mouth when they reach out to customer support. And customer support people typically are not the kind of people that want to have a conflicting conversation, right? They don't want to come up against conflict. They don't want to come up against hard. They just want to help. They don't want to have to hold the hard line. So when you can create a space where you're like, no, 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 Dan actually handles all collections. Dan, you create a new slot. It's not sales. It's not customer support. It's actually a retention specialist. Dan actually handles that. Then it's great because now customer support can run in their lane and sales can run in their lane. And then your retention specialist can handle that. So I'd say the position is the first. And then the second, that's the who. The what is, how do you deal with it? Because I think that the other side is sales handles things one way, customer service handles it another way. You need a whole new verbiage for a retention specialist that they can usher in well. So Dan, will you talk to us a little bit about people that you get on the phone with? You know, you try and set up Zoom calls with them, right? Because it's just good to get some face time. But what's some of the verbiage that you'll use with people to try and get them back in the boat?
Well, first of all, when I reach out to them, I want it to be in love, not just stern. And what I do is be upfront. Sometimes we have to have a hard conversation, but we can still do it in a nice way. So, hey, I see that you missed on the payment. Let's get together and talk about it. So generally I'll reach out by an email and then a text, and then also follow up with a link to schedule a Zoom call. A lot of times it will be a phone call. What I found was difference in generations. And I know I'm going off on a rabbit trail rather than speaking directly, but I'll come back to it. But depending on the generations, the older generation, they really want to talk to a live person.
It's true.
The younger generation, they'd rather text. They don't even look at their emails hardly anymore. But that's why I try to cover all bases so that I can, and having more touch points, so that when I do meet with them, and I love the Zoom because we can see each other face to face. We might not be in the same building, but we can see each other face to face. and they can see that we're sincere in wanting to help them. And so some of the verbiage is really to get them across the finish line and remind them that their yes was to invest in themselves. So
Right.
let me help you do that. Let me help you
Yeah.
finish what you started. And okay, we might need to break up a payment to get you back on track, but let's do it because
Yep.
we're here to see you become successful.
I think Dan, that's so good, man. What you just said there is so key, guys. If you can hear that, those of you who are selling things, if you can remind people their yes wasn't to you, right? They didn't say yes to you because you have some sort of amazing thing. Their yes was to themselves. Yes, I need this help. Yes, I've acknowledged I can't get this, I can't get there on my own. I need a solution. And then they came to you with that yes they had given themselves, right? So Dan, you do that a lot, right? When you're making a phone call, it's not just, hey, you gave us your word you were going to keep making payments. Why'd you stop making payments? It's like, no, no, no. Hey, can we just have a conversation? You had identified this was a pain point. If you stop making payments now and you lose access to all these things you previously purchased, not only is it like you're lighting money on fire because you've made half the payments and now you're just going to lose all that money and lose the access, but how are you going to address this yes that you gave to yourself? You acknowledged you needed help. You acknowledged this was going to be the way you got help. Where are you going to go for it otherwise? Dan, do you talk about that with your clients and the customers that you're dealing with?
Yes, I do. And again, the more touch points that we have the better off we're going to be. But
Yeah.
I do remind them, you know what? If you stop now, you miss out on everything that you've invested so far. So
Yeah.
if we work together, and okay, we've got to break a payment up so that you can get the momentum going again. We'll be right here by your side, and
Yeah.
we'll see to it that they do complete what they set out to do. There are some occasions where beyond their control or anybody's control that they have to leave the program that they're in, but we find that it's minimal. And when they find that we truly care about them, they're gonna be more apt to uh, put the effort in, even though it's a hard effort. That they will accomplish what they first set out to do. And another
And
thing, uh, what I found too is the way technology is now with AI, that might be another touch point, but you still need that human element.
yeah.
Use it to the best of our ability, but the human element is what's key.
Yeah, I think Terryn. So I know you and I both really love John Acuff a lot. John Acuff is amazing New York Times bestseller, 9 New York Times bestseller books, and was a client of ours for years. Still is a very dear friend. Something that John Acuff says is "some beats none." And I think sometimes visionaries can get in their mind, founders get in their mind, no, no, they owe us this money. I want all of this money instead of like, no, no, no. But could we just collect a little bit of the money? Like, could we just like, and Dan, I know that's an approach you'll make, right? Of, hey, I know you can't make the full payment that you made. Like, could we just scale that back a little bit and you could pay some beats none? Like, is there something you can put towards this? And we could give you some access back. Hey, if you just can put this towards it, all your stuff will stay intact. You're not going to lose your place in what you purchased. Or maybe you'll give them access to a smaller piece so that they can continue to build up momentum. I know that's like, what's the saying, Dan, that you draw more flies with honey than you do vinegar, right? Like and a lot of times that's what you'll do, right? Is look for a way that you can get a win, give them a win. If they could just like come back on with a little bit, bringing some in. Would you agree with that?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I think
Definitely.
so. Like that can look like a lot of different things, right? Times I've seen you do this in the past, Dan. It's been like, let's say they've said yes to a coaching package, that they had a bunch of access to modules, they had an active coach, they were part of an active community. I've seen you come back and say, hey, if you'll pay this much, then we'll actually give you an extra coaching session with this person to help get you back on track. Or if you can pay this much, then we'll actually turn your visibility back on. You won't be able to engage in the community, but you'll at least be able to see the community. Like what's a win you can give them, right? Nobody likes the feeling of they're just going to give you money and like they're just stuck still in the same mire, right? Like they're just still slogging. Like they need a stimulus, right? They need something that's going to give them that bump to get them back up and over the hump. So if they give you some beats none, if they give you just a little bit, could you give them something in return that would actually nudge them to make them reminded of, oh yeah, that's why I was in this. Oh yeah, that's why I was in. I need to be on these calls. I need to be asking these questions. Yeah, it's one thing to hear the question. I've got my own questions. How do I get back in front of this? So I think trying to come up with ways that you can give them a small win.
Absolutely. And if the CEO of the company or whoever I am dealing with gives me some latitude, I'm going to do whatever it takes to get their clients back working again with them, to get that income stream coming back in and make them a happy camper, if you will, that they are so glad that they invested in themselves and that they did make it across that finish line.
Terryn, I know that in the last couple of minutes we have on the show, I know there are a lot of people out there who don't know all the things that we do here at the Collab team necessarily. Something you do, I think, really well, that where you work in tandem with Dan, is creating a dashboard, right? Like, because if you don't have metrics, it's impossible to know, are we doing better or are we doing worse? Do you want to talk about just like some of the dashboarding that you do for Dan? Because I think that whether people come to us, if you're interested, if you're listening today and you're like, hey, this sounds great, I would really like to work with these guys. Heartfirstretention.com is where you can go to check that out. Heartfirstretention.com. We would love to help you with that, even if it's just talking. It doesn't have to be a sales pitch. If you want that, we just take a percentage of retained earnings is all we do. That's what you pay us. But Terryn, if somebody doesn't want to necessarily work with us, or if they're just thinking about it for themselves, would you advocate for the necessity of visibility, having some sort of dashboard?
Yeah, and that's a great point. When people have hired Dan, I do come in and help set up that dashboard for them. And it's really easy to just search through Stripe, find somebody, pick up a phone and call them. But what's hard is, how do we get metrics? Like you said, how are we tracking the success of what we're doing? How do we know that Heart First was successful enough to be able to pitch it confidently to people with metrics we can prove? And that's behind our dashboards that we set up. And so, yeah, it's just about identifying the source. What's your source that you're finding these failed payments from? Can we automate a report, or we need to do it manually, and setting up the process and syncing it. And from there, Dan's now got a list he can go through, and we can hit all the right check boxes to be populating this dashboard. Are people being contacted? Are they being collected on? How much in failures? How much in revenue? And that's something solid we can show the client. That's something solid we can show others too.
I love what I've seen you do, Terryn, for Dan. And founders or people who are listening and thinking about this process for yourself. The best gift of advice I can give you is keep it so stupid simple for guys like Dan, who are your retention specialists. The last thing you want is a guy like Dan to go dick around in your CRM. Like, you get lost in like pulling data, get lost in looking for names, get lost in all these different pieces where he just wants to get on the phone. He just wants to have conversations with people. He just wants to bring money back into the boat. If he loses a bunch of time and having to go dog down answers or look for information. So the thing that I think, one of the greatest gifts I think you give Dan, Terryn, is just that automated report, like you're saying, where it just feeds into Dan's sheet exactly who he's supposed to be calling, exactly how he's supposed to be reaching out, exactly where they're at in their payments. And Dan's just working from one sheet, and then Dan on that same sheet makes some adjustments that actually throw it into the dashboard, so you know exactly what Dan's closing, exactly how it's working, and then a good communication channel back with customer support once he's retained money to, hey, will you turn this access back on for this person because received payment? Create a tight loop, right? Don't waste your retention specialist time. Dan's best value for you is bringing money back in the boat, securing people's yes. Don't make him have to go hunt. Don't make him have to go figure stuff out. He's great at what he does, but keep it very, very sharp end of the spear for Dan. Because otherwise, my recommendation for you would be, you can lose a lot of time, waste a lot of time, instead of really Dan hunting down money, or whoever your Dan is. If it's not Dan, I think it's really important that you get really clear on what is the retention specialist role and what is it not, and how can team complement that so that Dan can just show up and be the badass he is at what he does. So, gentlemen, another great show. Ops Experts Club.
If I could, just one last thing. Let's say we meet with somebody and they, instead of them wanting to retain us, they have somebody special, because it takes somebody special to do the retention part of it. I'm happy to train and coach so that they from within, so that they can increase their retention of their clients.
Yes, Dan, great point. Thanks for pointing that out. So there is a done for you option and a done with you option where Dan will actually train your people too. So if you just want somebody on the field for a few months to get your people up to snuff so they can get out there and hunt people on their own, I think that Dan's a great solution for that as well. So Ops Experts, thanks for tuning in today. Dan, Terryn, thank you for being with us today as hosts. And Ops Experts, will see you here, same place, same time next week here on Ops Experts Club. See you guys then.
Yes. See ya.
I know.